actually been here before, but this is Clement Street, also formerly known as the second Chinatown. Third Chinatown, of course, is on Irving Street, which we've also been to. And just gonna show you around this area a little bit today. You guys were probably getting a bit tired of seeing the same intros of Lucky Chances. And plus, this is an opportunity to show you what San Francisco looks like in the midst of a pandemic. My brother Mike from Hong Kong also said things were getting a bit repetitive with all the Lucky Chances intros, so just wanted to change it up a bit. And as you can see, just a ton of great food options and restaurants out here. So this video is also a little bit different because I'm ahead in recording, but not so much the editing. The session that we're gonna hop into is actually one that I played earlier in the week, but before we do, I just want to highlight and answer a question from one of you awesome supporters of the channel. Tyrone Tracy writes, what are your thoughts on a proper cash game bankroll? I hear 20 to 30 buy-ins is appropriate. So my main answer to this question is to actually defer to the GOAT of poker vloggers. In one of his early videos, Andrew Nemi touches on this topic quite thoroughly, so I'm gonna put the link to that video in the description box below. As far as adding my 2 cents, here are some questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about a poker bankroll. The first of which is, what is your financial situation? Is poker your only and primary source of income? If it is, then you should probably lean more towards a conservative bankroll strategy. If you have other forms of income, such as a job, then you can be a little bit more aggressive. So it really all depends on your specific situation and also factoring in your expenses as well. The second question is, what is your risk tolerance? I know people that can work off just less than 10 buy-ins because they're fearless and or have backup plans if needed. And I know people that have over 100 buy-ins but choose to stick with playing small stakes because they just want to have that extra level of security. The last question is one that requires self-reflection and honesty. Are you a winning player in the games that you play? If you are, then you can be a bit more aggressive with your bankroll. If you're not a winner in the games though, then honestly, it doesn't really matter what your bankroll is because you will go to ruin, quite honestly. Whether you have less money or a lot of money, it's just a matter of time before that money gets depleted if you don't find a way to just be honest with yourself, find a way to improve in the game, because you're just going to end up losing. So those are my thoughts on this topic. Feel free to keep firing questions in the comments, and I'm happy to try to do a Q&A segment in these videos. If that's something that you want to see, just let me know. Of course, do take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm just sharing my thoughts and opinions. And with that, let's hop into the session played from earlier this week. All right, just closing out another session from Lucky Chances. Started the session at 8:30 on Tuesday the 13th. It is now a bit past 1 o'clock, Wednesday the 14th. And let's run through the hands. In this first hand, there are limps from the early position and the cutoff. I raise it to $30 from the button with 8-9 of hearts, and only the cutoff makes the call. Heads up to a flop of Queen 4 deuce with 2 hearts, so I flop a flush draw here. And after cutoff checks, I bet $30. He decides to put in a raise to $100. And this is a bit concerning as he could have bigger hearts and of course a queen to be ahead, but I decide to make the call and he has another 350-ish back. We go to a turn of a deuce of clubs. He checks it this time and I'm happy to just check and try to realize my equity here on the river. The river comes, a deuce of spades, so I don't get there. He leads for $200 and I quickly let it go. In this next hand, there are limps from the under the gun and the cutoff. I'm on the button with ace jack off suit and I raise it to $30. I get calls from the big blind and the cutoff. We go 3 ways to a flop of 10-3 deuce rainbow. When it checks to me, it's a dry flop that is worth betting at times, but the way the cutoff checked, he seemed very eager, so I decided to just check it back. We're off to a turn, which comes a 4 of spades, big blind checks, and cutoff bets $75. I make the quick fold and the big blind folds as well. This next hand is a bit of a doozy. It's a straddle pot. It's a 5-way limped pot, and I come along from the big blind with jack 9 of clubs. We go heavily multi-way to a flop of ace 9-5 with 2 clubs, so I flop middle pair with clubs. When it checks to the cutoff, he bets $35. Button calls, and cutoff is playing around $75 back. And so I decided to try and make a cagey move by putting in the min raise here to $70. That way, if the cutoff jams and the button calls, I can effectively re-raise to push out the button. My read on the situation is that cutoff isn't super strong and the button is capped to a pair of aces, and I think I can get him off that hand. So when it gets back to the cutoff after I min raise, he does indeed jam for $110 total. Button calls as expected, and now I spring in the raise to $300 to try to ISO. Well, unfortunately, this plan backfires because it looks like I get trapped and the button was more aware of the situation than I had thought. And now I just have to call it off and hope to make my hand. So I get it all in there for $800 and we're off to a run out. The turn comes a jack of spades, so that's a good looking card because I make 2 pair. And the river comes an 8 of hearts. We're gonna do the side pot first, and the button shows ace 5 offsuit for the flopped top and bottom pair to take down the large side pot. In the main pot, the cutoff shows ace jack offsuit for the biggest of the 2 pair holdings, and he takes down the main pot. And so from this hand, I'm down roughly $1,000. In this next hand, hijack limps. I'm in the cutoff with king queen offsuit, and I raise it to $25, and I get 3 callers: the button, small blind, and hijack. 4 ways to a flop of king 10-9 with 2 hearts. When it checks to me, I c-bet it for $50 and only the hijack calls. Turn comes a 3 of hearts, which brings in the front door flush, so not a great card. When it checks to me, I decide to check it back. River comes another heart, this time a deuce of hearts. Action checks through. The hijack table is queen 10 offsuit, so my bigger pair here does take it down. In this next hand, there are limps from under the gun and middle position. I raise to $30 from the low jack with ace jack offsuit. The cutoff goes all in for $67. Under the gun and middle position both call, and the pot is back open to me. And I think this is a good spot to isolate, so I repop it to $250, and both the under the gun and middle position fold. We're off to a run out, which comes king 5-4, 7-7, so I'm not able to improve, and cutoff table is ace king of diamonds to take down this pot. In this next hand, I raise to $20 from the cutoff with ace king offsuit. The button puts in a small 3-bet to $50. The big blind cold calls, and when it gets back to me, I decide to put in a 4-bet here to $175. The button is a pretty value heavy profile, but he's only playing about $600 total, and with a hand as strong as ace king, I think it's worthy of a 4-bet here, so that's what I do. And the button decides to 5-bet jam for $600. Big blind gets out of the way, and I think it's a pretty standard call here, and I go ahead and put in the money. We're off to a run out, which comes 7-4-3, 7-8. So I don't improve with the ace king, and he scoops a pretty nice pot here. And this next hand, I raise it up from the low jack with ace 3 of spades, and I get calls from the button and big blind. 3 ways to a flop of queen 9-4 rainbow. So I flop an over here with some backdoors. When it checks to me, I c-bet $30 and both players call. Turn comes a 5 of clubs, and this time I pick up a gutter ball. I would have liked to see a spade instead, but happy to pick up some equity, but action does check through. River comes a very nice card for my hand. It comes a deuce of diamonds, and when it checks to me, I bet $110. Button folds, and after deliberating for a while, the big blind makes the call. So I take this hand down with a nice river run out. In this next hand, it's a straddle pot, and I take a line that is not typical for me. I decide to limp from the low jack with pocket 3s, and there are 4 other limpers as well. Heavily multi-way to a flop of 9-9-5 with 2 hearts. Action checks through. Turn comes a queen of clubs. Action checks through again. River comes a 3 of clubs. So I fill up, and it completes the backdoor clubs. When it checks to me, I bet $40, and I get 2 callers, the hijack and the straddler. I table my hand, and I take down this lucky hand. In this next hand, there are limps from the hijack and the cutoff. I decide to raise it light from the button with 9-10 offsuit to $30. The hijack and the cutoff call. 3 ways to a flop of 9-6-6 rainbow, so a good flop here. Checks to me, I c-bet it for $50. Hijack makes the call, and cutoff folds. Turn comes an ace of clubs, so puts up a backdoor flush draw. When he checks, I fire out $100, and he quickly lets it go. So pretty much throughout this session, I was getting pretty roughed up due to a lot of bad play and some run bad. And that's when this last hand develops. I raise it to $20 from the button with pocket deuces. The big blind puts in a 4x 3-bet to $80. I decide to continue here. by calling, and we go heads up to a flop of 9-8-4 with 2 hearts. Big blind decides to check. It's a good board for my range versus his, so I decide to fire out a bet of $75, and he makes the call. Turn comes an ace of diamonds, so not a good card, and when he checks it, I decide to check it back. River comes a 4 of diamonds, and this time he leads for a pretty polarized sizing of $245. I go into the tank for quite a while, and after some deliberation, I decide to make the call. He tables ace king off suit for the top pair to take this hand down. So this hand was definitely what I think is the most interesting hand of the night. I clearly was not playing my best, and this is a good example of when you're not playing well and one decision on an earlier street can really compound itself into even worse decisions on later streets. So when he puts in a 3-bet pre 4x, I can definitely fold pocket deuces pre-flop. It's just a hand that doesn't flop that well, and it's just going to be hard to win with a hand like that. Secondarily, when I fire out a less than half pot bet on the flop, it's really a poor sizing there because it doesn't accomplish anything. My hand is so vulnerable, and the point of firing out on a flop is for equity denial. I really don't want to get called, so I should really be just firing out 75% of the pot to try and take the hand down there, but because I made it cheap for him to continue, that allowed him to bink the ace on the turn. And then the third mistake that was made in this hand was calling his river bet. I mean, he's just never really bluffing in that spot. The only bluff he can have is a weirdly played king queen of hearts, which I think would have continued to show aggression in earlier streets. So just an all in all poor play on my part, and definitely deserved to lose this one. So that wraps it up for the notable hands played tonight. It was a very rough session. Got in the game for $3,200, and I cashed out a shade over $800 for a pretty large deficit to end the evening. Not ideal to ever run into these sessions, but you try to just remind yourself that poker is a game of in the long run, and looking over the course of this year, even though I haven't played that much, I'm still having a pretty decent year. So that helps when you look at those statistics. So yeah, losing is an inevitable part of the game, and just got to try to do better on the next session, which I will try to do. But let's try to end this video on a positive note. The one great thing is that the chair massage is back, Ramon is back, and I had a fantastic head massage. And no, not that head.